Hi there. In this video, I'm going to show you on how to build a multi-agent supervisor architecture. And this architecture is going to be very powerful because it can handle multiple requests. If you give a request which is related to clustering, in that case, the clustering agent is going to be activated. But if you give a request which is related to sentiment analysis, it is going to activate a sentiment analysis agent. So you can see that this is very powerful because it replaces multiple notebooks in a very traditional way of working using one multi-agent architecture. So let me show you on how to build this architecture from scratch. So I'm going to use my platform called as datajarvis.ai, and you can also try it out. It's free to get started. So let me first start by logging in. So here you come to a page where you can create a new agent. So let us click that. And here you get a default architecture. So we are going to play around this default architecture to create our supervisor architecture. So first of all, let us start by naming the first agent as a supervisor. Now, any agent, it uses a large language model. So let us use a large language model, which is called as Data Jarvis Free. And if you want to see all the list of large language models available, you can go to Model Hub. And here you can see that Data Jarvis Free corresponds to the Claude IQ 4.5 model. Of course, if you want, you can add your own LLMs as well as API keys using the Model Hub functionality. Now let me go back to the builder, and here we are going to delete this tool node, and I will tell you why later on. And instead we are going to bring in an agent which is going to help us do the sentiment analysis, as well as we are going to bring in another agent which is going to help us do the clustering. Now, both these agents will need access to the large language model. So I'm going to just make sure that both of them are using that Data Jarvis free model, which is the Claude IQ model. Now, the LLM is just way to understand the user request, but the actual work gets done using some tools. So we are going to use some clustering tool, and we are going to click here clustering, as well as here the sentiment analysis. Also, I'm going to make sure that it is going to use some sentiment analysis tool. Now we also have to bring in a tool node where the actual work will happen. So I'm going to just push in the tool node here. So this is where the clustering will happen. And we will also need a tool node for the sentiment analysis where the sentiment analysis will happen. Now let us connect all these nodes. So here the clustering is going to go to the tool node, and this goes when we receive something called as tool node. And once this agent receives a signal to use a tool node, it will go to the tool node. And once the work is done, the work is then passed back to the clustering agent. And similarly, the sentiment analysis is also going to use the tool node whenever it receives a message to use the tool call. So we are going to configure that. And once the work is done, it is then passed back to the sentiment analysis. Now, let us also see on how to pass the work from the supervisor agent to clustering agent or the sentiment analysis agent. So this functioning, in fact, is done using the system prompt. So I'm going to type in a system prompt, which will look something like this. That you are a supervisor agent, your only job is to decide what specialist agent should handle user request. Do not perform any analysis and do not call any tools. So the job of this particular supervisor agent is to see, based on the request, either to call clustering. In that case, it is going to emit an information that route is clustering, so that the work is routed to the clustering agent. Or if the route is sentiment, in this case, if the request is made for sentiment analysis. And if it is neither sentiment, neither clustering, in that case, the route which is emitted is the done. And here we are giving the exact rules on what is the route which is outputted. Now, let us also configure the route here. So the route, in fact, is an agent decision. So agent is going to decide whether to route the work to the clustering agent or to the sentiment analysis agent. And here, the route marker, in fact, will be the route itself. So the route marker, in fact, is just an prefix which is added to the agent decision. So the agent decision will be either clustering, sentiment, or done. Now let us configure these three values between the supervisor and all the different agents. So between the supervisor and the clustering, as we said, the value which will be passed will be clustering. And between the supervisor and the sentiment analysis, the value of the route will be sentiment. And of course, if it is neither clustering, neither sentiment, in that case, the value which is passed is going to be done. In that case, the work is going to end. Now, we also need to pass the work from clustering agent to the end node, and this is done when the work is done. So we give the key as done, and similarly, we pass the work from the sentiment analysis to the end node also when the work is done. So here the key is also going to be done. So this is our final multi-agent supervisor architecture. And just to recap, we have a supervisor agent which is using a large language model, which is the Claude HiQ model. It has got a system prompt which says that it has to emit a value for the route, which could be clustering, sentiment, or done, based on the prompt which is given by the user. If the branch, if the route is clustering, in that case, work goes to clustering. If the route is sentiment, in that case, the work goes to the sentiment analysis agent. The sentiment analysis agent is going to use a tool which is for clustering. And here we will need two tools. The first is for the clustering itself, and also it will also need a tool to determine what are the columns which are required for clustering. And similarly, the sentiment analysis is also going to use a tool for sentiment analysis. Now let me just briefly show you the tools which are available. So I will go to the tool hub, and here you will see the list of tools, and let us first see the clustering tool. So clustering tool, in fact, is a Python function which accepts a data set as well as number of clusters as well as the number of columns. And here you can see that I'm going to import different libraries from scikit-learn. I'm uploading the data set into a data frame. I'm applying some pre-processing. It means that I need to convert numerical values using standard scalar and the non-numerical values using one hot encoder. Once the pre-processing is applied, I'm using the k-means algorithm to do the clustering, and then I'm storing all the results and returning back the message that the clustering is done, and what is the silhouette score, the accuracy of the clustering, as well as the number of clusters which are created. Now, similarly, the sentiment analysis tool is also going to look something like this, where we are going to use a library called as Vader sentiment, which is going to calculate the positive, negative, and neutral scores of each and every text which is given. Now, before we run, let me also show you rapidly the data what we'll be using. So we are going to use cars data for making clustering. So you can see that there are a lot of columns which are related to vehicle information. And for sentiment analysis, we are going to use this data set which is on Amazon reviews, and we are going to calculate the sentiment for this review column. Now let us go ahead and now execute our agent. But first of all, we can save this as supervisor multi-agent. We can save it, and we can also make a quick check. So you can see that this is a valid flow, and we can now start getting with this particular agent. So I'm going to first of all ask a question. So let me type in a message such that make clustering on cars underscore data with numerical columns with 3 clusters. And let us see on what this agent is going to reply. So as you can see that now it has gone, first of all, to the tool which is going to do clustering. And here we have all the results for clustering. As you can see over here, it has identified the cluster 0 is for the economy and compact cars, cluster 1 is for premium and luxury cars, and cluster 2 is for mid-range standard cars. Now, let us give a second message that use the data set for Amazon 50 and make sentiment analysis for the column review. So as you can see that now it is going to the sentiment analysis agent and it is calculating the sentiment of all the different lines. So this is pretty powerful because we handled both clustering request as well as sentiment analysis request all using the same agent. You do not have to write multiple notebooks, but everything is within the same agent. This is really powerful from a usage point of view. Now, let us give another request, which is neither sentiment, neither clustering, but we are going to ask the agent to create an HTML dashboard. So here I'm giving a message such as create an HTML dashboard using the above results, create tab 1 for clustering, tab 2 for sentiment, and use the results above what you already have. So let us see on what the agent is going to reply. So it is asking what technology I want to use. I can simply say that use custom HTML. And voila, you have your dashboard, which has got both tab 1 as clustering, and this has taken from the results what it already has available, and the tab 2 is for sentiment analysis, which is once again taken from the results what it already calculated. So my friends, this is really powerful as you can do sentiment analysis, clustering, and any data science activity using one agent, one multi-agent supervisor agent, which is going to decide on what data science activities are required. In addition, it can also produce some additional HTML nice looking visualization. So try this out on datajarvis.ai and let me know your feedback. And please also at the same time, subscribe to the channel and like the video. Thank you very much. Bye.